everybody? It's the Build Different podcast. Ricky and Sean, a few weeks removed from our last episode, but excited to be with you guys again today. Today, we really wanted to get into our biggest setback as a company. You know, everybody experiences high and lows. That's business. But there's some that kind of stick out more than others. Sean knows that we have one in particular that was kind of a setback, but in recognizing that it's learning experiences as is everything in business or everything in life that just don't repeat the same thing, don't repeat the same issue, learn from it. So Sean, I guess I'll let you go ahead and kind of spiel off what as COO of Extropian, what that setback was or kind of is that we're dealing with and getting past now.
Yeah. I mean, it was so essentially we created a prototype design, and we had prototypes made of that design. And after the prototypes got here, we realized that some of the sensors that we had chosen were not ideal, whether they, one of the things that we've kind of, I think, hinted at or talked about in the past is the ability for our devices to be placed on different parts of the body, not limited to just one part. And one of the sensors, specifically the sensor that measures health-related metrics, was very limited to being only able to measure from one of the places on the body that we really never even anticipated putting a device. So that kind of was a big setback, and that whole prototype as a whole, there was design elements that just weren't really aligned, and things that interfered with other pieces of the design. So at the end of the day, it was more of the design of the prototype as a whole than it was just one issue with it. And while it didn't necessarily, while we were still able to use those prototypes and do a lot of testing, a lot of progress, and a lot of things with regards to some of the other metrics that we've come up with, it did hold us back in certain elements of what we wanted to do. So personally, I would say that's kind of the biggest setback. And I mean, I would assume that you agree because we've had this conversation before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, one of the things you mentioned is, not making that same setback happen again. So what were some things that you noticed with regards to, maybe why that setback happened, or because obviously anything that happens is not just based on, one thing. There's usually a couple things that have to go wrong for something to really go wrong. So what were some of those things that you identified as things that led to that setback really happening?
Well, I'll say this. I'll take ownership as CEO, the head of the company. I have to take ownership of kind of the mistake and why the setback happened. Essentially, you can't really leave something as big as that, the decision of the components that we selected or the design up to like one individual person. Um, it has to be looked over by the entire team. I should have gotten a second, third, fourth set of eyes on it. Um, I think the biggest thing from my perspective is I didn't match the purpose of the prototype, the business need to the design. So essentially, we just designed something. It was kind of like throwing things on the at the wall and making sure they stuck. There was a lot of assumptions that were made, and that ultimately that falls on me because I had the last sign off. I had the last kind of look over everything, and the last I signed my name at the end of the day to do the production of it. So that would be number one. That was on me. But yeah, it was definitely number one, not looking at the business case and not matching it up to what we needed to design. And it was a learning experience, you know what I mean? a learning experience, something that we said we'll never do again. Because we do it again, it could be really, really set us back. And you know, I first noticed it too when we they were the prototypes were finally done, and we were looking at the data streams, and we were noticing that the data was the data was saturating, like the acceleration was saturating, and I'm like, oh shit. That's when I was like, damn, like this isn't good. You know what I mean? And then I guess from there you kind of like, can you do something? Can you interpolate the data to make it, you know, to get around the saturation and the issues that we had, the limitations of some of the components we had. So yeah, it was just, you got to do these things. When you look at these things, you got to go through with a fine tooth comb before you spend a dollar, before you sign your name. You got to go through to make sure, everybody from every level of the company that's associated with the design and selection of components and, purchasing, that everybody's everybody's thoughts are aligned. Like, this is what we need to do. And again, the business needs to match with the design. And that's something that we learned the hard way, and that we're utilizing that, you know, the knowledge gained from that mistake to do things the right way now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. And I think the point you brought up about making sure that the design matches the use case, and like the business side of it is a very important thing that can get overlooked because it's, sometimes it's just, oh, we want these features, right? And it's like, that's fine. I mean, the prototype that we have or that we made had technically all of those features that we were asking, but it didn't have the features that we were asking for in the right sense of, in this particular situation, we need you to do this, like X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
It was able to do X, Y, Z in a different situation that we don't really care about. So, I think, that is definitely something that we've kind of gone over. And, I think from when we made that mistake to now, it's like, okay, everyone in the company is now aligned. We all know,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is what's going on. This is the market we're targeting. This is these are some examples of what data could potentially look like for this type of movement or this type of activity. We need to make sure that the components that are being selected align with what those thresholds could be, so that everything is gonna essentially future proof itself. We're not gonna make something and then realize, like, a month later, 2 months later, oh well, this isn't gonna work. We have to do it again. So I definitely think that we've learned from most of the mistakes that we've figured out. I mean, even the charging of the first prototype was something that we didn't fully consider when we had it in there, and then we ended up having to change it basically in the moment. And we
Twice,
realize now,
really.
like, okay, yeah, let's not do that again.
Well, twice, really, because yeah, we put a type of charger on there that interfered with one of the other sensors, and that really even threw off our calculations and algorithms even more. Well, would have completely eliminated a magnetometer. So.
And then, yeah, I mean, the other thing you brought up too was, um, having multiple people checking what you're doing, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with everyone who's been a part of the company, we've had belief and trust in their abilities, and I would say we still do. Um, but at the same time, no one person, no matter how good you are, is prone to, like, is perfect and never going to make a mistake. There's people, you've made mistakes, I've made mistakes. Even everyone we've had on board has at some point done something that was like, oh, maybe we should reconsider that. And by talking through it, by having multiple sets of eyes on it, 3, 4 people looking at it and saying, yeah, this looks good. This looks like it's going to do what we want, you know, and people of not only the people where that's their expertise, but the people that might not be their expertise, but they think about it in the sense of, oh, well, you know, I'm coming at it, looking at it from the business side. Is this going to do what we need from a business perspective?
Mm-hmm.
Someone else might look at it from a like
Financial.
biomechanical side, who understands the different angles and things like that, and is it going to do what we need for that? And then someone might come in from a medical side and be like, oh, well, is this going to get what you want from that side? So it's like having people that can all look at it and all work together and say, like, yes, this checks off this box, yes, this checks off that box, and go down the line, as opposed to one or even two people saying, oh, this should work, and everyone else being like, okay, you know what you're doing. I think
Yeah.
that's been a big adjustment as well. And I mean, even with what we're currently doing, and I'll let you even expand on this too, but yeah, talk about a little bit more about like how we've changed some of those processes now with what, the next iteration of the prototype should look like.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah, I'll get to that. There's something you touched on too, and I have to commend you on because yeah, you do have to look at it from different angles. Many of the angles that you mentioned, you happen as COO happen to be well rounded and know a bit about everything and kind of dip your hand in every different department. You've kind of you do a good job of looking at it from the financial aspect because some people might not look. There's people on the engineering side that might look at it and be like, I don't really care how much it costs. You know what I mean? It's gonna do what we need it to do. But you're analyzing it from is this gonna help us? Is this cost of goods and also our I can't think of I want to say markup, but our
Like profit margins.
yeah, the margins. Is this gonna help our profit margin here? And so yeah, you look at it from that angle, from the is it good from the technical angle, so you do a good job of that, and that's why you're in your role as well because you can kind of talk to every different, look at it from a pragmatic standpoint instead of just the engineering side or we have people from on the financial side that are like this is too expensive. So the happy medium, you bring the happy medium there between and kind of make it cohesive a decision. Um,
Thank you.
but yeah, other thing I was going to say before you talk about how we change things was like it's hardware. People always say hardware is hard. It is because software we can go in and change the line of code easily. You know what I mean? Hardware, once you do it and you spent the money, you're stuck. You're gonna have to go back and spend that money again. You're not just you're not gonna take off a sensor and add a sensor that easily. You know what I mean? You can't maybe in certain instances, but a really solidified prototype, doesn't typically work that way. So that's the hard part about hardware and making sure you get these things right. And it's never going to be 100% right. There's always going to, be something that you don't like or something that doesn't work exactly the way you want it to work. But, you know, software, you're going to be able to change that pretty easily in comparison to hardware. So that's one of the things I want to get across hardware. You just gotta make sure and get it right. And then to touch on what you just said, the new process, I think we've brought in and shout out to Ryan, Patrick. They've with the companies that they work with before, they've kind of been here before. They've seen the mistakes that have happened. They things that aggravate the hell out of them that they're like, I don't ever want to go through this again. They're helping us eliminate that in many ways. And Ryan's been very good from he's got the business acumen and the biomedical and then the engineering prowess, I guess you would say, to kind of make sure that like we have everything down on paper. You know what I mean? I don't think we ever were this with the first prototype we ever had things marked down and we kept track of what we were doing, and we definitely didn't go through any types of calculations like our battery consumption and just overall making sure all of the different components and the layout of the board and everything like that was going to be it wasn't configured exactly, and you didn't look at it from a calculation standpoint and ensuring that you kind of have everything in the right place. So I think we've gotten a lot better at documenting what we're doing. We're reaching out to people that have, other people that have done this. So it's not like we're just relying on one person, and then we're not just, we don't take each other's word. You know what I mean? We all investigate and look into it. We all do our due diligence, and we all come to a consensus on what we want to do. Very much so. We were really, me and you were really getting our feet wet when we built that first prototype from a technical standpoint. We were learning, and shout out to Cyperio and Mark and everybody out there for help, kind of taking us under their wing and teaching us. Mark sat down with me, and I learned a lot from him about design and board development and component selection and what to do and what not to do in many cases. Um, and so, I think we now have a better grasp on what we need to do. We have a firmer grasp on what makes sense in a lot of cases and what doesn't make sense. And we just, we don't rest until we have the answer. We really do some digging. I mean, if going into the data sheet and going and using AI or whatever, I use Claude personally, but and I use them all. ChatGPT. I don't want to seem like I'm going to one specific one, but going in there and using it to kind of analyze and to learn what exactly you're looking at, and if you don't understand something, putting it in there, and then going back to like a Ryan or a Scott or a Patrick and asking, hey, this is kind of what I found. This is what I was thinking. Like, this is what do you think about this? And at the same time, we both learn, which we need to keep doing, learning and growing about what we're doing, what we're doing. But yeah, and before a dollar's spent, we make sure that all our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed in terms of making sure we in our heart we're doing the right thing instead of just kind of throwing shit at the wall, essentially.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree. And one thing that you even mentioned too, or something that you mentioned that made me think of this was, um, when it comes to component selection, for example, like, obviously you were talking about how difficult hardware can be. And with that, it's like, not only do you have to choose the hardware that does what you want it to, but you also, like, there could be 5 different components that do the same thing. So, doing all those additional calculations of battery consumption, of like the financial analysis of each one, and then looking at the size and looking, I think we spent a good amount of time on like board optimization and trying to make sure that, like, the board is using the components correctly and that they're aligned in a spot that makes sense, from a battery consumption perspective and stuff like that. But even that, the spacing, like, there's different things with regards to how much the components need to be spaced out, and how they can be laid out in a way that will allow us to do everything that, like, for it to do everything that we want it to do, and for us to fit as much stuff and as much capabilities on that board in really what we want to be as, like, the smallest footprint as possible.
Yeah,
And trying to make sure that none of the components you're picking are components that have been around for a while, because at the end of the day, something that's been out for 5-7 years is either going to be obsolete soon, or it already is obsolete. So, new components are constantly being invented. There's, like, you go on to one of those websites and it's like they've got the 176 and the 177 and the 179. It's like it seems like there's like 1,000 different components that are like, oh, this one's just a little bit newer and a little bit better for new designs. So you have to take that into consideration, and not to mention even just inventory. If you're going to be doing a prototype, you want to make sure that it has the capacity uh, to handle large scale manufacturing within your timeline of when you see yourself doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
the lead
so
times as well. That's a big
yeah,
time. Some of these components don't come in for 10 weeks. You see, sometimes remember when we were looking when the chip shortage was happening, and we're like 24 weeks. What the? You know what I mean?
yeah, it was that was definitely all a learning experience, and I think some of those things we did experience in that first run, that first prototype, and we kind of like understood a little bit of what to expect, but like you said earlier, we were still very like even though we understood some things, we were still very much learning a lot of things. So by this second time, we're like, okay, we know to check this, we know to check that, and even maybe go a step or two beyond where we were going before to make sure that yes, this is the right thing, this is the right component, this is the right layout of
Hmm.
everything that will get us the product that we want to eventually bring to market.
Yeah, and I mean, we've learned so much every step of the way. I mean, we had shout out to Georgia Tech, to Wish and Dr. Yao, Josh Lee, but we had that initial prototype, remember, and we learned a lot from that about that one. Like we're like, well, we learned a lesson there about research versus commercial.
Yeah.
Because yeah, we were like, yeah, we could just take this out and start. Why can't? And that was me personally as well. Even before you came on, learning that you know what's done in the research lab. It's typically you're not going to manufacture that thing. You may have a variation of that, but it's hella expensive. It's only made. They're not thinking of scale. They're just trying to prove a concept in a lot of aspects.
They're
And there's
usually very they're usually very like manually handmade too.
yeah,
They're not
in the
so
clean
much
room.
mass like yeah.
Yeah, it was made in the clean room, and then it's not made to last either. It's not, it's just go out and test it. It's gonna break at some point. If it does, hey, it's research. So we kind of learned from there, and then we went and we started designing, and then we learned from that, and now we're learning from the device we have now, the prototypes we have now, going into what we're essentially finalizing now for this next version of it. And I mean, if you look at it, the antenna problem. Not going to do that again. Exactly the way we did it. Is like we said, the IMU, not what we need. And then our biometrics, not what we needed either. That was another big mistake that set us back. Was um, I mean, the data that we get back can really can't use because it's so damn noisy and it just it looks like complete shit to be honest. So
And the charger.
the charger, yeah, the charger is the by far on a utilizing it user experience probably the most annoying
Yeah.
no
No,
annoying
I
thing.
definitely being that more than one of us have broken a prototype due to charging issues, it's not necessarily the best thing. So
No, that's I mean I guess we can kind of talk when we end off with like what we're looking forward to with the next one. But um I was gonna mention though, like the beauty of all of this, like I said, besides learning, it didn't stop us from moving forward. Like, we could have stopped. We could have been like, oh, this thing sucks, and like, oh, we'll just wait a couple, redesign it, spend a little more money, try and make it into into what we need it to be. No, we pushed ahead. It allowed us to develop a platform. It allowed us to build algorithms. Um, we've learned a lot from this device. So, while it sucked that it held us back in a lot of regards from pushing all the way forward, we still pushed ahead. And I mean, we have a kick ass, shout out to Patrick, a kick ass app that we can take out and we can collect data. We can interpolate that data to get meaning out of things that we're not limited by the. It limits us, but we can go around those limitations to do what we need to do. And in many aspects, is Patrick's done a phenomenal job of helping us forge ahead, and we can literally take this out and you know play some golf with it, or play hit some golf balls, tee off on it.
yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head there, and it's we essentially made the most of what we had with that device, right?
Hmm.
Like that device wasn't perfect. It's still not perfect. It has its issues, but we were able to at like in a lot of ways use the data that was coming in, use the information that was given to us and say, okay, well, like let's still find a way to use this. Let's still find a way to make metrics from it as best we can. And the parts of the device that were very lackluster are going to be improved in the next version. We know where they are. We've identified them, most of them, I would say. And we've identified, okay, not only that it was bad or that it was wrong, but what are we going to be doing in the next version that's going to fix it? We're not just, throwing on another sensor saying, fingers crossed this one works, like
Hmm.
using developmental kits from different companies, trying to test out different sensors. That's been something that we didn't really do the first time. We kind of just
Yeah.
ordered them and said, let's hope for the best. And, in some ways it worked okay, in some ways not so much.
We're
But yeah, I think
reaching out to the vendors and having discussions with their engineers. I mean,
yeah, that's been part of the checks and balances process for us too, is, you know, hey, instead of us just saying, let's make an assumption that this sensor will do this thing, we reach out to the company that makes it and says, hey, does this sensor do this thing? Will it work with this other sensor to get us what we want? And there's been times where they've said no. And like we've had to kind of pivot, adjust, and say, okay, you know, what can we do to make this work while still trying to maintain our design, trying to maintain the efficiency and all the other, every change that's made kind of trickles down into a lot of different things, whether it's financial, technical, um, and things like that, and obviously business use case. So just making sure that, yes, we had to make this change, but that change isn't going to affect like all these other factors that we need to be aware of. So
yeah, we don't need any more domino effects. One thing being an issue, and then it it knocks everything else down in different areas of business. So, um, I guess to round up, like I almost feel like a kid in a candy store, like developing this new device because it's almost like you're getting. I always use cars as example. You get to pick the interior, the rims, the you know what I mean. You kind of have we all had our wish list based on what we experienced with this last device. It's like now we're like we get this IMU that does this, and we get what are you looking forward to most about this new design, and then uh, what are you looking forward to most, and what is like kind of like you're like excited about with this new design?
I think there's three things that I'm most looking forward to. First thing would be the antenna, like a new antenna, different design of the antenna. Um, Not all of our prototypes were the best uh, with
Communication.
transmitting data.
Hmm.
Sometimes the antenna would have issues where it would get blocked or where it would, not really transmit all that well in certain situations. That is a problem that we've identified and hopefully we believe we fixed it. Um, and that I think that's going to really open things up where, if the data is transmitting well, it'll make it'll trickle down into positive domino effect where it's making our algorithms more accurate. It's, um, the data is going to be cleaner and, not have to do as much to it to make it work. So that's one of the big things that I'm excited about. Um, a better charging method is definitely like just from the user perspective and being someone who's tested out the devices and stuff, the charging of it was always like scary. Like it wasn't even like it wasn't something that you could do like, oh, like this is an easy thing to do. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, like I'm gonna be spending the next 10 minutes trying to plug this in a very, very precarious way. And so not having to do that anymore is going to be really, really cool. And then the last thing that I'm excited about is just the new, and this isn't necessarily something that we've shared yet, but the new shape of the next prototype. It's got a little bit of a different design that I think really will actually work a lot better with kind of the use case that we're going for. And also, I think it's just cleaner overall. We want people to see our device and be like, oh, wow, that's a cool design. That looks cool. It feels good, and I think our newer design will do all of that a little bit better than maybe the last design did.
Yeah, I'm with you on the charging because my God, that's a nightmare. I'm scared every time. Most of the times when you're trying to charge the thing, you're nervous as hell. I'm with you on the antenna. I'll add to what you said as well. With the design, the Bluetooth, just the best, the highest Bluetooth spec that we can get right now. I think that, like you said, it's going to be a trickle down effect to everything else. I'm really excited too about what we're doing as far as attachment to the body. Working with material science groups that are building different types of materials, and I'm really excited, especially after the call we had yesterday um, about designing that and just making it super user friendly and almost like a natural form factor for people. And I think from that, like you said, the trickle down effect is the data that we're going to produce, and even having new data streams, having different types of biometrics. Yeah, I'm just excited. It's like, like I said, it's like you're the kid in the candy store picking out all these different candies, assortments, and different things that you want. You put it all in a little bag, you go home and enjoy it. Um, like I said, equate it to cars and just getting the exact spec you want. You spec it out to your liking. And more than that, I think it allows us to, because one of the things I really hated with this last device, bottom line, was feeling limited. You know what I mean? Say, for instance, we want to have a different use case, like building this in a way that we can go and pivot to different areas. We don't have to go back and redesign this to make it fit with another sport, another industry. It could be literally work across the board because we're not limiting ourselves in any way with the components that we have. That overall, I think, is the biggest thing because, like, I hate to feel like there's something that we're missing and then we have to go back to the drawing board and add something, or you know what I mean, like just building it just across the board for anybody, any use case, because that's initially what I had from a user experience perspective and design. Is something that we can all use, and that's natural fitting, form fitting. Um, you know, that's been the main goal and objective of the company. And when you don't have the components on there that allow somebody to just put this thing on and do what they need to do, then we're not living up to what we bill ourselves as. Um, yeah,
And yeah, I mean, from a business perspective, obviously it's better too because uh, being able to seamlessly transition to a new market gives you a lot better prospects for, projecting out into the future sales and things like that.
yeah,
So I would agree with it from that side. And yeah, I also agree with just the whole not being limited thing. It definitely felt limited during our first prototype with a lot of different aspects of it. But I think we've taken a lot of that limitations that we had in the first time and focused on getting rid of all of those so that we don't have that problem again.
so
So
maybe it's like a blessing in disguise, really, because if we hadn't felt the headaches that we felt from this particular prototype, would we design it in a way that, you know what I mean? We may have
like if
still,
it was working exactly how we wanted it to,
yeah,
we might not have future proofed it as much as we tried to do for the second one.
exactly, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything else, Sean. I was gonna round us up and um, Yeah, you hear that, Mr. or Mrs. Investor. We're building this for the future. We're building this for so that the business cases, we're not limited by the hardware, and we can just go and we can go from market to market because we really truly in our heart of hearts believe that this is going to impact so many people. We built something that's you know not for one particular sport, not for one particular industry. The way the user experience that people feel, you can literally use it for anything. It's just natural. That's all we can say about it. It's a natural user experience. Um, so yeah, it's I'm excited. Can't wait to when we finally get these prototypes going. Can't wait to show everybody, and would love to kind of go back and show go back to this episode and kind of show people in the future the different designs that we were talking about and the different processes. I think that'd be a cool episode one time to kind of go through, show people all of the various prototypes and the deficiencies, what we learned, and kind of go from there, into the current prototype and how impactful it is.
Yep, I definitely agree.
Yep. So with that being said, hope you guys have a great weekend, a prosperous week. Um, love you guys that tuned in, and we'll catch up with you guys in the next one.